Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome in. This is DraftKings, the Slate. We will talk to you for the next hour or so. Big weekend of games. A thrilling finish last night, of course, between the Chargers and the Raiders. But Week 18 is wrapped up, and that means we now turn our attention to Wild Card Weekend in the National Football League. Here on the Slate, it's Brendan Glasheen, Jeff Ulrich, Matt Meiselman will be taking your questions, your feedback, and more so hoping we can inform you to some degree as we get set for 6 games this weekend spread across 3 days, Saturday, Sunday, and it came to the attention of a few people on this show that there will be a Monday night wild card game. Jeff, how are you? Your Titans are the 1 seed, so no Titans for Jeff this weekend. That's got to feel pretty good.
I mean, it feels very good from a betting perspective of just where I have them in the odds, at plus 1,000 or over. So it's nice to see them wrap up. Although I admit they did make that game a little bit closer than I would have liked at the end for some reason. That's just the Titan way, though. But yeah, it's nice from that perspective. I'm doing great. I mean, there's going to be tons of interesting games. It's crazy Sunday, and yeah, I got some takes here, some things that I think there's a lot of interesting ways to look at these games, and I think a lot of people will be looking at them differently than I am this week. Let's put it that way. So,
Matt Meiselman, how goes it?
Well, I'm excited to break down this upcoming 3-day playoff schedule, and that was a lot of fun watching Chargers Raiders. I really don't have a ton of takes yet for the wild card round, so I'm interested to see what you guys think. Maybe I can just be reactive, respond to what you're thinking, because I'm looking at these betting lines and it's just like, these are good lines, like almost all of them. Maybe we can get into the weeds a little bit and talk in more detail, but just as like a big picture thing, looking at the betting lines and also the futures odds, everything just seems well priced. Like nothing is, maybe that's the hot take, is like all this is fair. But yeah, maybe I have more to say once you guys weigh in.
Yeah, so Saturday is loaded with AFC games, and then Sunday has 2 NFC contests and 1 AFC game, and then Monday's game is Cardinals-Rams. So we can dive into all of these. If folks have particular thoughts on individual games, we'll do our best to touch on all of them. We're going to be doing that throughout the course of the week on the Sweat and the Slate. So a lot to touch on here. That game last night was unbelievable theater. I think we can all say that the additional week was worth it. That was fun. That was a fun little watch last night between the Raiders and the Chargers. But here we'll just go in order as the week goes, right? So Saturday we have Raiders Bengals. That's the 4:30 game, and then the Patriots and Bills will meet for a 3rd time this season. First and foremost with the Raiders, we were just discussing. They get a situation where they have to play on one less day of rest. They have to play Saturday after playing last night. They met earlier in the season. Cincinnati whopped them. So, Jeff, how does where's your mind at here going into this game? I can't remember exactly where you were at with the Bengals, but these are 2 teams I think you were kind of distancing yourself from at one point down the stretch.
Well, I mean, I lost a little bit of hope in the Bengals when they went through that rough stretch, but I mean, I think they're very live. Let's put it that way. I don't think that like you can just say, oh, well, the AFC is wide open, but Cincinnati doesn't have a chance. I mean, I don't, again, I just look at the AFC and I mean, like Matt talked about the futures odds. I mean, I'll just hit it right off the bat. Like, why are the Bengals double the odds of the Bills? They're both playing this week. Cincinnati beat the Chiefs, 2 weeks ago. Like, I don't see that the Bengals being a team that you should be discounting here at this point. And yeah, like I get it. Like it's their first time in the playoffs. How is Joe Burrow going to react? Zach Taylor, but man, like this is a pretty solid team. I mean, I really do think that, and I feel pretty confident saying that they have quality wins. They have different ways they can beat you on offense. Yes, their defense, sometimes they let up a bit, but their pass rush is pretty good. I think this team is very live, and I think that -6. When I first looked at it, it seemed a little bit big, but do we really trust the Raiders in this spot? And I think that's the other thing we need to talk about is, I get it. They beat the Chargers last week, but they needed to get up 10 points in that game, and they barely hung on. Like this is a team who allowed 4 fourth down conversions, 4th and long conversions, and like I don't even know how many points the Chargers scored in the second half, but it was a bundle. they needed those 10 points, and they're probably not going to get a 10-point lead against the Bengals, and they're going to be on the road here. So I think 6 points is pretty appropriate. I think that, again, like Matt said, I don't think this is like a way off line or anything. I mean, I'm not saying the Bengals should be like 10 points, but I would lean Bengals here. Absolutely.
Yeah, 6 points, totals at 49.5. You can get the Raiders on the money line at plus 200. I mentioned they met earlier in the season, and that was in Vegas, and the Bengals won 32-13. And one thing we'll do throughout the course of the show, because we're kind of difficult, pretty much these will probably remain the same, right, throughout the course of the week, but predictions are kind of a lazy approach to a show, I think is what we're kind of trying to say. And what do we know, really? But Matt Meiselman, having experience seeing line movement for a particular slate of games, I think this kind of week with folks really locking in on 2 games one day, 2 games or 3 games the next, fun to follow what the line looks like, and you're not overwhelmed with 15 games. You only have to worry about a couple each day. So with the Raiders and the Bengals, the line's at 6. Do we feel this could get shorter or longer? What do you think, Meiselman, throughout the course of the week here?
I think it's probably going to get longer. So if we had the same circumstances for both teams, just 2 teams, equal rest, equal motivation, let's say, equal injury situations, I would probably like the Raiders at plus 6 in Cincinnati. I think like that line is essentially pricing in that the Bengals are 3.5 or 4 points better plus home field advantage. I think that's more than the difference between these teams. I think it's only the Bengals are a couple points better, but the circumstances do favor Cincinnati. They just had this week where they didn't really play any starters, and the Raiders played a late Sunday night game. Josh Jacobs has been banged up. Darren Waller's been banged up. The question mark here for me is whether Joe Burrow's knee is totally fine and, he was just resting, or maybe there's something more serious there. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on. Like, if we get all indications that Burrow is practicing and looks totally fine in practice, there's nothing wrong with his knee, I think we will see this line get up closer to a touchdown.
So Bengals, and we'll get to the Eagles too, but those are the 2 teams of the 12 playing this weekend that rested. They made it very abundantly clear we are going to rest people, and they didn't have anything to play for in the sense of their seeding. But yeah, I mean, to your point, maybe there's something there. Also, the Eagles had a bunch of COVID issues as well. We'll go right down the line here because I know we got a late start on the show, so I guess we should keep the ship moving here. Patriots and Bills, they meet for a 3rd time now this season. You have the windstorm, snow game, early December. They meet in Foxborough, and I think in that game, you found out that Buffalo's talent is just a step above, and the Patriots, they've lost 3 of 4. They've been a little exposed here. They can only win one way. Patriots 1-6 when they trail after the first quarter. So they don't get out to a good start, they're in trouble. And that's the story of the Patriots. They are the Bills are laying 4 points here, Jeff. What do you think?
Yeah, this one, I mean, I think of all the games, and just in terms of line, this one feels like the most appropriate to me.
Okay.
I think you'll see some movement still, but I don't think this will get like to 3 points. I just think that if it goes below 4, it was 4.5 this morning, actually, when we were talking about on the sweat. And I feel like, it'll probably fluctuate there. You may even see it get towards 5 or something, but I just think that the Bills, we know, obviously they have the last win. They're the team coming in. I don't know how, like, if it got to 3, I just feel people just pile on the Bills. And similarly, how many points can you give Bill Belichick in a playoff game before everybody just says it's too many points to give the Patriots? So I feel like this line around 4.5, it'll probably fluctuate a little bit, but it feels like the most appropriate to me. And this game also feels like one where, I'll say the Patriots just because, I'm not really enamored with how the Bills have been winning, and they've been beating bad teams, and they've kind of just been doing it with the defense and special teams. So at the same time, I'm not ready to say that like the Patriots should be, this should be a pick 'em, or like the Patriots should be like under 3 points here. I think this line is pretty correct. I would lean the Patriots just because, again, I'm not like loving what I've seen from the Bills of late, but this one to me is, I think it's just going to hover around 4 and 5.
Meiselman, could there be some clothesline value here? Because when they met the first time in Buffalo, I think it closed at 2.5. if I remember correctly.
It was about that. I'm pretty sure. Yes.
Right. And then the game in Foxborough, which Jeff mentioned, that was the last one. And Buffalo beat New England on the road 33-21. It really was never that close. And that, again, has just kind of been the script with the Patriots. They make the final score look compelling as if they did battle in that game, but they never really did. Buffalo led at 1.7-0, then 17-7. And Patriots were never really in the game. But I'm pretty sure the line closed at Patriots -3, maybe 3.5 in the game in Foxborough. So I'm curious now that we're seeing a matchup for a third time, and I don't think we get Cardinals and Rams will get that, but that's it across the board here. We're not going to see another pair of teams play for a third time.
Yeah, this game is really difficult for me. I think, well, that second Patriots-Bills game, I think, was the high watermark for the Patriots this season, where coming into it, they had just beaten the Bills on the road. They were getting them at home, and they had been playing just so well up to that point. And then that game was a letdown, and they really have struggled since then. I mean, the Dolphins game in the last week of the season, I guess they really were trying to win that, because there was a point in that game where the Bills were only up 3 points against the Jets in the second half. Like, Patriots had a legitimate chance to win the division. They weren't just rolling over. Like, there was some thought going into the week that if the Bills are up big, like, Belichick will just pull the starters in the second half because they have nothing to play for. That was not the case. So, like, I think less of the Patriots right now than I did a month ago. At the same time, these teams are close-ish. Like, I thought the Patriots were the better team. Now maybe I think the Bills are the better team. I think there's a case that this line could be anywhere from Bills -2 to Bills -6. Like, I think it's just really hard in a short season where things have changed so much to really get an accurate assessment of what these teams are. And then at the other variable we have is it's going to be like 10 degrees in Buffalo for this game.
Just looking up the weather. Thank you.
We're right on the same wavelength there. So I don't think it's supposed to be that windy, but that's cold enough where you definitely get different kind of play calling than normal. So Belichick did really well the first time we had weird weather. Maybe he's able to, pull some more magic again and do, I don't know if it'll be the same thing where he just runs every play, but that definitely adds an extra wrinkle to the game too.
So I'm reading a high of 14 on Saturday and a low of 5 in Buffalo. Yeesh.
It's cold.
Yeah, it is cold. And it's the lowest total on the slate, 43 points. What kind of game do we think we're getting, right? Low scoring again, like it was first time in Buffalo?
I would think that total comes down a bit. I don't know.
Okay.
Yes. I think that's probably for me, that's probably my favorite play right now is to play the under at 43, because I agree with Matt. I don't think most people are in tune with the weather right now. And once the public starts to get fed that news a bit more, I think you'll see it definitely come down, especially with the history between these two teams.
Right. I feel like the familiarity could lead to a lower scoring game. That's true. I mean, look at not quite. Maybe it's kind of the same, but look at Baltimore and Pittsburgh. That was a slog yesterday.
I just mean more the history of like recently and them playing close defensive games. Like literally 8 weeks ago. So
right over time. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And right. Even with games with Brady, Brady in division games. Bill looks at it and goes, "Let's get out of here with the win. However we have to do it. Not necessarily covering a spread." So yes, a total might be the play. Speaking of Tom Brady, Sunday, 1:00, Eagles. Just let me get this off my chest. Disrespectful to the great Tom Brady, burying him at 1:00 on a Sunday afternoon. What is this? Come on, 1:00 on a Sunday against the Eagles, against Lane Johnson, Mr. Fun Lane. Hope he enjoys his trip to Tampa. This has changed quite not drastically strong, but it was at 7. This opened at 7. Now it's at 8.5. What do we think, Matt Meiselman?
I think we are. I don't know. I'm having a tough time reading.
Jeff's laughing already. I love it.
I'm having a tough time reading what the Eagles' COVID situation is doing to the line, because I guess there was some worry they wouldn't have their players back. Dallas Goedert's back. Boston Scott's back. Jordan Howard, who I think is the least relevant of those players. It sounds like Miles Sanders should be okay. I might be misremembering, but the Eagles are basically going to be at full strength. So do we here's what I'm wondering is how good are the Bucs without Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown?
Right.
We don't have a good sample on this team where Mike Evans and Rob Gronkowski are the top receivers. And then he's probably not that important, but Cyril Grayson got hurt against the Panthers. Fournette should be back though. Like the Eagles should be more than 7-point underdogs. but whether it should be 9 or 10, or it should be like more in the 7.5, 8 range, or 8.5 spare, that's what I'm struggling with. So if this line gets out of the range of 7 to 10 at any point, then I think that's where value opens up. Like if there's a point where the Eagles are plus 10, let's say, I like that a lot. If the Bucks get down to -7 for whatever reason, I would like that too. I feel pretty confident that the spread should be in that range somewhere.
Yeah, Bruce Arians spoke today. Leonard Fournette, Shaq Barrett, JPP should be back. Levante David is the closest call for the Bucks. That's coming from the Bucks ESPN reporter today. Yeah, they met earlier in the season as well. Thursday night game. I can't remember if one of the teams was off a bye. I don't think that was the case, but the game was in Philly, and I had Bucks -7, and that's when they went for 2, and that's when I got really upset. 8.5, man. Jeff, I guess this relies on our faith in Jalen Hurts, and to Meisselman's point too. I mean, what do the Bucks look like in a big spot against a team we think will be back to full strength?
So, I want to put your earmuffs on for a sec, bud. When I talk about this game, just tune out for the next couple minutes.
Pick against them, I dare you.
The last real team the Bucks played was the Saints. They got shut out 9-0. Now that game had a lot of circumstance with it, but it does make you wonder here. They're playing an Eagles team who, the Eagles don't really have any quality wins. So maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but I do think the Eagles will be able to kind of shut down Mike Evans. If that's their only guy they need to shut down, the Eagles have been very good at shutting down like the outsides of the field. I think they're going to give the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a lot of issues in this game. I think they have the perfect type of quarterback in Jalen Hurts to counteract a great defensive line, a line that's good at stuffing the run. But, when we're talking about stuffing the run, it's just a different kind of run that you're facing with the Eagles. And I think this is advantage Eagles for a couple other reasons. Like you mentioned these injuries being back for the Bucks. The Eagles are kind of getting discounted here, I feel, at 8.5 because people are worried about the COVID issues. They got smoked yesterday. None of that really matters because all these players are coming back and they didn't start anyone yesterday. So I think at 8.5, this is probably my favorite line like right now today to hit. I think the Eagles are absolutely live to win this game. I really do not have confidence in the Bucks with only Mike Evans back there. I think losing Chris Godwin is huge. I think not having Antonio Brown is huge. And like I said, I just think this is a really good spot for a scrappy quarterback like Jalen Hurts to come in. This team is going to be given no chance. You mentioned the early start time too. Like no one's talking about the Eagles this week. No one's giving them a shot. This is just, this game's going to be a blowout. It's boring. We're putting Tom Brady here. Man, I'm telling you, don't sleep on the Eagles this week.
I don't disagree with you. The line, it's getting longer than I would have liked if I was to have any interest in backing Tommy.
Yeah. And I don't know about just from a line perspective, like Matt mentioned, I think he said it started at 7, which actually surprised me that it even opened at 7, but I don't know if this line will get back. Like, I don't see it shrinking. I think once you hear Fournette's back and the Bucks get some defense, I think you'll even see it get bigger.
Right, because you already know, no Godwin, no AB, there's no hope of another big piece if Arians already spilled the beans on Fournette, JPP, and Shaq Barrett. There's no other, maybe Levante David, but he's not worth enough points to move it back.
There's probably not going to be much line. There's probably not going to be much line movement to this game. My guess is it creeps towards Tampa, if anything, just from the public.
Okay.
As we get closer to game time, maybe it reaches 9. Yeah, I do think. I think the Eagles' money line is more interesting to me than the Eagles' spread. Variance is just not accounted for enough. We just had a game where the Colts were trying to win, facing the Jaguars, who arguably were trying to lose, or at the very least didn't have incentive to win, right? They were just playing to play. And the Colts are the much better team. And they didn't even come close. They were blown out. A couple of garbage touchdowns or one garbage touchdown. But these games can go any number of ways. And I think the reason that I think there's more variance here than normal, and it's kind of to Jeff's point, is we don't know how good the Bucks are with who I think are their 2 best receivers in Godwin and Brown out. Yep. They haven't played a lot of games without both of them. The last time they played the majority of a game without having either of them was that Saints game. I think that's right, where they had Godwin, but he got hurt in the first quarter. And Brown obviously wasn't there for that game. So yeah, like I think this is an anything can happen game more so than other similar underdogs. Like I'm not going to make the same argument for the Steelers. Like I'd be really, really surprised if the Steelers win, but I think that the Eagles have much more of a chance. And like this could be a game where Brady just looks bad. Like that wouldn't shock me just given the weapons that are out.
Bro, and the quarterback situation on the other side is a lot different, right? Like Jalen Hurts can make enough plays to not only keep it close, but make an explosive play or two to be the difference.
Yeah. I think Hurts in general is a pretty high variance player too. Like he's young, mistake prone, but also has crazy athleticism, and he could have the worst game of his life or the best game of his life. And those are like more in range than it would be for, let's say, Ben Roethlisberger, who we know is like basically doing the same thing every time he's out there.
And to Matt's point, like that's pretty much what happened in the last game. He was playing terrible against Tampa, and then he just got hot late.
Yes.
And he like you said, he covered for the Eagles there. So there's lots of ways this game could go. Hurts could also fumble 3 times, and this could be a Tampa Bay blowout. So, but I think Matt's right on with the money line. I think I said something similar this morning. The Eagles are live here just because there's so much variance in this game. Penalties
were big in that game against Tampa, and yes, I remember watching it thinking Philadelphia's play calling was just so blah. Like I didn't really get it. Now they've come a long way since. By the way, the Eagles have put out on their Twitter their top tweet roster moves. They've activated a bunch of people from the COVID list. So for those of you concerned about that, Avery, Cox, Epps, Goddard, Jordan Howard, Maddox, McLeod, Boston Scott. Like I think everyone they put on the list for last week's game against Dallas, they're all back. So that's something to update as well. This one to me, I feel like could be is like New England, and Miles Sanders still might not go. Thank you to Eamon and Andrew, by the way, behind the scenes here helping us out. Good stuff as always. We're here till about 6:00 tonight. Okay, Niners Cowboys. This one fascinates me as well. I think this one's very, very close. Like the Niners could give the Cowboys some fits, but it is the shortest spread on the slate, just 3 points. Niners getting a field goal, Meiselman. What do you think?
I'm leaning Cowboys here. This might be like the strongest take that I have for any game, which is, I guess, in relation to like my other takes, I guess is what I'm saying here, because I don't have a huge take anywhere, but I do think the Cowboys deserve to be a little bit bigger favorites. I think we are seeing a little bit of the bias built in that the Niners just won a really tough road game in the last week of the season in LA. Yeah. The Cowboys did win their game convincingly against the Eagles, but like they got to rest. And I think that's ultimately what the biggest deal is here, is that Dak played the whole game, but it was like a very easy game, or he played most of the game anyway. And then the Cowboys also had some defensive guys that didn't play. I feel like they're in better shape in terms of rest. Also, they played the day before. The Niners are coming in after a Sunday afternoon game. The Cowboys played on Saturday. I think these are just like little things that help them a bit, but I also just think the Cowboys are the better team. So to me, this line should be a little higher, but I mean, I'm not going to be shocked if the Niners win. I think the Cowboys are really good. And to me, they're the most undervalued team in the playoffs right now. I just think they've had kind of a tumultuous season, but maybe Michael Gallup being out is the reason that, you know, people are sleeping on them. Like, I don't know what it is, but to me, this team is really, really good. So
do you get a sense at all just from the Cowboys as a brand, that this team, maybe that they're a very public team, right? Like we think about the Lakers in the NBA, just the Cowboys, very public team. Do you get any sense that maybe Dallas, it creeps to 4 or 5, and then because just folks think that this year's different, this Dallas team is different?
I don't think playoff lines generally like it's really rare, I think, to see a point spread for a wild card game move so much without news, just because I think a lot more thought goes into setting them. And then there's less potential for news because, you know, in the regular season, maybe like motivation spots are part of the equation. In the playoffs, everyone needs to win. Like everyone's on equal footing as far as like the importance of the game. So 5 would be a little much, I think. But if you said a move to -4, I could see that, definitely. I think that we could see a lot of people betting Dallas, and it could creep in their direction.
Okay. Yeah, and two very different scenarios as far as what they were playing for. To Meiselman's point, watching the Eagles and the Cowboys play, that was essentially like a walkthrough, the way they shredded Philadelphia's defense. It was just, that was a clinic. It wasn't even close. And then for San Francisco and LA, that was a battle for the division, of course. There was still something on the line there. So maybe San Fran comes in a little more beat up.
It sounds
and a quick thing before Jeff goes is that Jimmy Garoppolo is not 100%. So maybe that was part of what you were going to say.
They were in that place having to rally from behind because of how bad he played early in the game. Like, everyone leaves that part out. Like, it was sensational, and he's a good looking guy. But other than that, I mean, he put himself in that position. Sorry, Jeff, go.
Great jawline.
It's true.
So first of all, I agree with pretty much everything Matt said about the Cowboys. Like, we are very much on the same page on this game. I think that line movement wise, I think 3.5, you could see it move up to. I'd even be shocked if it got up to 4, to be honest. But this one opened and I'm like, I just like, it's weird, right? I mean, the Cowboys are at home here.
Yep.
The 49ers needed a last second miracle comeback win just to get in the playoffs. And we're basically being told, like, this was a neutral field game, like these teams would be even. I'm a little bit scared of getting too far on the Cowboys bandwagon, because we do have Kyle Shanahan versus Mike McCarthy here, which, like, it's scary. This San Francisco 49ers offense is really hard to stop, like, for the whole game. Like, you can get up on them, but they're probably going to make some kind of comeback. I do trust the Cowboys here. I think the Cowboys, too, we mentioned their season has been up and down, but that's okay. Like, they're here. They've got the home field advantage. They've learned from that. The last time they had a big win, they had a letdown. Probably not going to happen again. I think, this is definitely one of my favorite spots as well. I think this line should be, it should just be a little bit more in favor of the Cowboys. I get it. Like, San Francisco, they're going to score points, but we've seen this Cowboys offense really, when they get rolling, man, like they're impossible to stop. And Matt's mentioned a few factors already, but I'm pretty much on the exact same page as him.
So this has the highest total. Now, it is in Dallas, and the Cowboys have a great record to the over when they're at home, granted. But are we sure? I know I just kind of dumped on Jimmy G there for a minute, but I know he did it. He came from behind. They were down, 17-0. Are we sure that they can do that again? Like, meaning,
I mean, one of the
I feel like San Francisco has to get a lead in this game for the over to have a chance.
I mean, I don't agree. I think that there's lots of ways the over can hit here. I mean, I do think, like, one of the biggest factors for me liking the Cowboys is their pass rush against Jimmy G. That's scary. But San Francisco, again, they're just a team that, like, they're just going to keep firing. I mean, they've got Deebo Samuel. They're going to, like, they have Kyle Shanahan is a genius. And that's why it scares me a little bit to be this bullish on the Cowboys, because I think Dallas is going to need 30 points to cover, potentially, at least 27. So, no, I like the over here. I think San Francisco, you just go back. They basically can't be held under 23 points. So, or they just haven't been. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case here. I think they'll keep firing till the end of the game. I just don't think it'll be enough. So I actually like the over in the spot.
Okay. No, I was just wondering from a game script perspective. Like, if
they could knock Jimmy G on his butt, and, you know, it could go bad. But I'd be surprised if that happened.
The other thing with this game, too, the Cowboys, at least this is how it seems to me. I don't actually have the numbers to support this, but the Cowboys don't really seem to let up passing wise when they have a lead.
Right.
Like, I actually think the Chiefs are a little bit different there. Like, if we see Kansas City up 14 or 17 in the fourth quarter against the Steelers, I don't think that they just keep airing out. Dallas, that's just kind of what they do. And then the other thing is this game is in a dome. And Clash, you mentioned this, that Dallas is good to the over. You would think that, like, at home specifically, right, because they're playing in a dome at home. You would think that the sports books in general would just know this, right? Like, this is common knowledge. Where do the teams play? Are they playing in a dome? Are they playing outdoors? I still think it's an undervalued element to football that domes mitigate wind enough where it's undervalued to play indoors, because even 5 to 10 miles per hour of wind is enough to just throw off a couple passes. Like, quarterbacks aren't quite as sharp, and this is generally baked into the lines, but I don't think it's fully baked into the lines. So it's part of the reason that I think this Bills-Patriots game probably should be a little bit lower total is the weather. There's no weather when you play in a dome, and that's part of why the Cowboys offense looks so good at times, but it helps San Francisco. It's not like they play in a bad climate in San Francisco, but just being indoors to get rid of a little bit of wind that might be there, I do think it matters. So it makes it a little bit easier. Like when even Taysom Hill can throw accurate passes in domes, like it just helps a little bit. So I'm always a little bit scared to bet unders in games that are indoors.
There was one game, I think, this year where Jimmy Garoppolo and the Niners looked horrid. It was that awful weather Week 7 against Indy at home. It was a Sunday night game. I don't know if you guys remember that game. They only scored 18 points. But to Jeff's point, in any other game, they've played dome teams at home, and they've outscored them. Minnesota.
I mean, Dallas knows this. Like, they just saw what San Francisco did coming back. And, like, I think Matt's right. Like, they're not a team who really lets up anyways, and they're not going to let up in the playoffs against San Francisco. I think as much as the Patriots-Bills looks too big, this one looks too small to me.
As long as Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't throw picks in the end zone, which he did do. Well, he threw one in the red zone yesterday, and he did the same thing against Tennessee. That would be my only fear. Really just comes down to
throw
Garoppolo
him in his own territory, too, though, and create points. Like,
exactly.
I guess it could go both ways. I think that's an argument both for and against, right? Like, you're not wrong at all. It's kind of fluky where the picks happen.
Right, but you both have proved like it all points to an over, which again, highest on the slate as of now, 51. Okay, we've got two more games before we go. Pittsburgh and Kansas City. It is a shame that Justin Herbert is at home and Ben Roethlisberger is still being talked about. 12.5 points. Where did this open? Did this open at 10? I don't remember what I saw.
I think so. I actually think that the line you're thinking of is the time they played a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
I may be wrong about that.
I saw it at 12.5 this morning. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, I don't think. I don't think this line was ever 10. I may have missed that, but that could have also been like a look ahead line from previous. Yeah. Like, I'm not sure. You might be right. I didn't see it there, but yeah, to me, like, if the Chiefs cover, it probably is closer to an under game, and if the Steelers cover, like, I think the Chiefs are going to score like roughly the same amount of points regardless. Like, they're going to be right around their team total. And it's either the Steelers keep up and force them to be passing at the end, or the Steelers don't keep up and the Chiefs are just running in the fourth. I'm not really sure why the dynamics feel different between the way the Chiefs play with leads and the way, let's say, the Cowboys play with leads. I mean, do you guys see it different? Because to me, it just feels like they sit on the ball more when they're up big. And maybe it's just because we see it all the time, because the Chiefs are up big like a lot of the time.
No, I know. I mean, you're not wrong. Like, it does seem Andy Reid definitely, I think he's done this throughout his career. He definitely seems to get a little bit too conservative when, just at times, not like all the time, but when he gets a lead. And it seems like they've gone to like a little bit less of that like run and gun. Like, we're going to chuck it to Tyreek deep even though we're up like 2 scores. It seems like less of that has happened. I don't know what they'll do in the playoffs. I mean, you kind of attack the Steelers on the ground anyways. So, but this line to me, man, like, I think the Steelers are actually going to give the Chiefs a bit of problems. I'm not picking them for a win, but this is a Steelers team who, I mean, they, like, we talk about, you know, the some of these teams coming in with like wins over weak teams, like the Bills or the Bucks. Like, the Steelers have beaten divisional opponents in the Browns and Ravens, who were like, you know, favored over them to reach the playoffs. They've basically been in a playoff race for the last 5 weeks. I mean, I think this team, especially with their pass rush, they get great pressure. They're really good at like kind of defending the pass in areas too. I think this team will make it close. And yeah, it comes down to like Ben's going to have to execute a bit, but 12.5 just seems too big. It just seems too big for this one, man. I think the Steelers, the things they do well are being discounted a little bit too much here, and everyone's just focused on Ben not being able to throw over 10 yards.
So I'm just looking back at some of Kansas City's. I'm looking more at the playoffs, right? So 2 years ago, they had to come from behind in like every game. We all remember that, right? When they had to come back from every
year they won the Super Bowl, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
They trailed to Houston. They trailed to Tennessee, right? So, and then they trailed in the Super Bowl against Jimmy G and the Niners. And then last year, they did have a lead early on against Cleveland, and they just kind of ran it into the dirt. And that's when Cleveland kind of kept it close. So that's kind of the script maybe that works for Pittsburgh. If they can keep it, final score in that game is 22-17. Game against Buffalo, down 9-0. They came back and smoked them, 38-24. So they've been, I guess my point is, when they're at Arrowhead specifically, they've had spots where they go down a touchdown or go down 9 or 10, and they turn it on. So more so, that's been their scenario more often than being up.
Outside of that Chiefs game where they did get thumped, like, the Steelers have been pretty good cover team too. So Yeah, I don't know. I'm cautiously on the Steelers side here on the spread. Again, I'm not going to go crazy and pick the outright just because, I mean, if you need to score from Ben late in the game or something, like good luck with that. But I'll take a 12.5. Like I'll take the Steelers side. I think you might see this one come down since we're going to talk about line moving a bit. I think you may see this come down a bit closer to 10.5, but I don't know. I don't know if Matt has a different take. Steelers, the Chiefs will probably be a pretty popular bet if they do come down at all. So.
Yeah, I think more people are going to be on the Steelers than, let's say, on the Eagles or the Raiders. Actually, I really don't have a great feel for what the public thinks of Raiders Bengals. Like, the Raiders just came off this big win. Maybe people are riding that. But let's say, just to compare the Eagles to the Steelers, I do think the Steelers will be more of like a trendy public team.
Bigger fan base. That stuff matters, I think, right? Like, that's just two big brands, Kansas City, Pittsburgh.
For sure, and like the way the Steelers ended their season, I think that's kind of why I'm a little unsure on the Raiders. They want a big game to get in.
Yep.
They actually they seem to be playing well. They just saw the Chiefs. I feel like that's a narrative that's going to get talked up a bit. It's like when teams face each other multiple times, maybe there's a tendency for the subsequent games to at least be closer because the teams are more familiar. But just to go back to one point, Glash, you kind of alluded to it with Jimmy Garoppolo, is like when you're looking at metrics for these teams in football, like this is a specific problem to football because of how few games there are in the season. Like Garoppolo played that game where it was raining against the Colts. That game is baked into points per possession, yards per play, DVOA from Football Outsiders, like whatever your metric is or whatever combination of things. Like there's so much that misses about the context of the game. So like there are the obvious things like Mason Rudolph started a game for the Steelers and that game was worse. Or Trey Lance started some games for the Niners. But like the stuff where, let's say, the Bills played the Patriots and it was so windy that no one could pass, like that's not appropriately accounted for when you have all these, like, I mean, I love analytics as much as anyone, but there's no, like, most analytics are not good at adjusting for those things. So that's why, like, in football specifically, you have to look at these games with a degree of uncertainty that you're kind of accepting on the surface, where we just like don't, and I guess I've been kind of harping on this all season, we don't really know exactly how good these teams are. Like the Chiefs, okay, we understand they've been the same team for a while. Tampa is the one, like with players missing, do we really know? Like we're not sure. So I think for many changes in trajectory between the Cardinals and Rams throughout the season where like I'm very confused as far as what these teams are.
Pittsburgh 4-4 this year is a road underdog, and there's a stat out there, right, on Tomlin as a dog in general. His team comes to play, right? So that's another narrative that the public might suck up, right, and take the cheese on the 12.5. All right, last one. And actually, Meiselman, you said something there, and it made me just think. I wonder if this is the first time in league history where every matchup in Wild Card Weekend, these teams saw each other at least once in the regular season. I found that interesting. Notice that? Everyone's played each other. And
it's especially weird considering there's more games now. Like it's not just 4 of them, there's 6 of them.
6.
Yeah.
And they've all played each other at least once. In some cases, we'll get a third matchup. In other games, we'll get a second matchup.
That's we've got 2 divisional matchups here. Obviously, they faced each other twice. Yeah.
All right, what do we think of this one? Cardinals, Rams. Rams win the division because of the Cardinals like falling apart here. I feel like folks might be getting a break here with the Rams being -4. Rams feel like the better team. Then again, Matt Stafford, like not sharp, not great. I mean, Matt Stafford, the one thing that I would say about Stafford that's been good until yesterday, he wasn't throwing interceptions in the fourth quarter or late in the game, and he did that yesterday in overtime. Jeff, you first. How do you feel about this game? Rams, Cardinals, Rams -4.
I mean, the first thing I'll say is I'll take the Cowboys over both these teams in the odds because that is 100% correct. Like these teams are just like you can't really trust them. I mean, they obviously both have flaws because they both have like just terrible losses on their record, but they also obviously have winning records. I mean, you look at the Cardinals, like 1-4. I mean, chance to win the division, can't beat Seattle. I mean, but the week before they beat the Cowboys on the road. So these teams, their ceiling is good. They can do stuff. They can, their defense can create some turnovers. They obviously have some elite players, but like, how do you trust one of them to cover 4 points at this point? Like, I have no interest in the Rams. I would just take the points with the Cardinals because I think these are very similar teams. And I think this actually goes to their coaches because I think their coaches are very similar too. They're both, very offensive minded gurus. They're very stuck in their ways. They're quite frankly, they're not good game managers. And sometimes they just won't get out of their own way. And I think that there's certain aspects of the game with both these teams that they're exploitable. And, for asking for one of them, maybe the Rams offense gets hot here and covers, but the Cardinals, it could be the exact same scenario. And that's basically the way the two games played out with them this year, right? One team dominated the first one with offense. The other one dominated the next one. I have no idea what's going to happen in this game. I really don't. I would just take the points. And this is the one, if I don't have any money in this game, I won't feel bad at all.
What do you think, Matt? We got to wrap it up here in a few minutes.
Yeah, so I won't elaborate much more because I think Jeff's right. And I also just feel very unsure about these teams. So I'll just mention something briefly in terms of where I'm looking betting wise. It's not up yet, but player props for this game, specifically the backfields for both teams, there's going to be a ton of uncertainty with who the running backs are and what the breakdown is. Like both of these teams, I mean, we had Chase Edmonds play with James Conner out. Then we had James Conner play with Chase Edmonds out. Theoretically, they're both going to play. And then the same deal in the Rams backfield, Sony Michel, Cam Akers. We don't know the splits yet. I think later in the week, as information starts to unfold there's going to be some opportunity to, kind of play the news game and hit some player props, assuming it's late enough in the week where these lines are out because we don't have them yet. So this is more just something to look for further on. This game's on Monday too. So for DFS could also be interesting to late swap into some running backs. And, we don't know what the time,
it does give Cam Akers an extra day to rest and prepare, right? So who knows?
Too.
We know McVay really likes Cam Akers, so it's a weird spot for running backs, 100%.
Real quick, I realize the star power is a little bit different than the Buffalo New England game, but two division teams again. This totals at 50. Do you think, like we said in that game, could that total move in the other meaning? Could it move down? Can this total move down as the week goes on? Or does it move the other way? Because folks look at it and go, ooh, two great offenses, NFC West, take the over.
Yeah, I think it's that. And especially because this is the Monday night game at the end of the whole week, I think we will see this line, the total higher by kickoff, maybe 51, 51 and a half. I'm probably interested in the under, but I want to wait until 8:14 for the 8:15.
I see.
I want to wait as long as possible. Yeah, that's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, right. I see. Okay. All right. Great. Well, that was good. We did that in 45 minutes. We got to all 6 games. That was fun. Man, there's a lot there, but it's going to be fun. We'll have coverage throughout the course of the week here at DraftKings on the Twitch channel, the YouTube channel, also on the DK Live Twitter handle where we go up live for this show just after 5 o'clock. That's going to do it for us. For Andrew and Eamon behind the scenes, Matt Meiselman, Jeff Ulrich. Be sure to watch The Sweat tomorrow at 11 a.m. every weekday on the DraftKings stream, and you'll get all the information you need for these 6 wild card games starting on Saturday. Thanks so much. Brendan Glasheen saying so long, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.